Can we be good without God? Well, think about this. The Christian God's backstory was only written about 6,000 years ago by the Jews, not the Christians. It's an obviously fanciful story, including a man made from dirt, a woman made from a rib, and a talking snake. Can that be a reliable source of information? And how did the inhabitants of planet Earth manage previously, before the Bible was written? Without the Christian God. That's how. The question, can we be good without God, has two assumptions buried in it. Assumption one is the assumption that there is a God. Assumption two assumes that there's such a thing as goodness. So, is there a God? Well, no evidence for any God has come to the attention of the members of Atheism UK, so the rational position is to be sceptical towards the claims of believers, who merely assert that there is a God, that there is only one God, that it's their God, and that all the other gods are false. They do this without providing any evidence. The best they can do is to construct arguments that there is a God. Arguments are mentally constructed cases, associations of ideas that can be refuted or debunked, and none of these arguments can be tested for evidence of the existence of a God who doggedly remains hidden. So we should ask, can we be good without God a reasonable question? Who asks such a question? It's a Christian question. It's coming from a presuppositionalist position which barely applies outside of the Christian culture. If we do choose to accept the claim of the existence of a God, the next question is, which God? Anthropologists estimate that at least 18,000 different gods, goddesses, and various animals or objects have been worshipped by humans since our species first appeared maybe 300,000 years ago. There's even some recent evidence that chimpanzees may perform worship at altars and make offerings to them. Here's some of the gods. My favourite god is Unkulunkalu, and my favourite goddess is Cloacina. Unkulunkalu is the Zulu creator god, and Cloacina kept the sewers of Rome flowing freely. For the purposes of this debate, let's assume the Christian God. What is goodness? Good and bad are subjective value judgments, which are heavily influenced by the cultural perspective of the person doing the judging. They are concepts, not absolute or objective natural phenomena. What is considered good in Islam is very different from what is considered good in Christianity, especially if you are female. So the terms good and bad only have local cultural relevance, and that's just a geographical accident of birth. Have you noticed how religions have spread out from a central source, a point of inoculation, in the same way that a bacterial colony does? This is a serious issue because religions divide humanity into antagonistic tribes needlessly. Yes, needlessly, given that no evidence for any God has so far been produced. I'm open to being shown such evidence, but please don't waste my time giving me arguments. So, Does the Christian God have a monopoly on the supply of goodness? Does he dispense it to us, mortals? Is it like this? Notice that God and Adam are depicted as white and male. Why do you think that is? Is it because it reflects Michelangelo's patriarchal European culture? Now, the first problem that we come up against is the Euthyphro problem. Is something good and just because A, it is intrinsically good and just, or B, because God says so? If it's A, what's the point of God? He's just a postman, collecting goodness from some mysterious source and delivering it to us. He's a Santa Claus with a sack full of goodness. He's the Amazon product fulfillment department. Do Prime members get next day delivery? Will the van driver leave it round the back if we're out? If it's B, if God wills the good and just, then God could dispense evil, but it will be labelled as good just because it came from him. He'd be a mafia boss. In fact, according to the Old Testament, God does perform evil actions. In Genesis, he even committed genocide, drowning the entire human population except for Noah's family. There's numerous other examples in the Bible where God initiates, instructs, supports, or does not condemn activities that would be considered criminal in many civilized countries today. And first convincing us that we need saving, then offering us their salvation in return for our submission and money, isn't that a protection racket? Now, I'd like you to ask, are there any good atheists? What about Sir David Attenborough? Stephen Fry? Sandy Toksvig? Ricky Gervais? John Lennon? Professor Alice Roberts? And some of your friends? You? Me? I like to think so. Isn't it offensive to imply that a majority of the UK are not good? 2021 census shows 37% don't believe. BAS, the British Attitude Survey, made it 52% in 2022. Now let's go abroad with this thinking. Figures show that the most criminal populations are the most religious, and the least religious nations are the least criminal. Now let's ask, can Christians be good with their God? Paedophile priests, millionaire televangelists, prosperity gospelers. Recently, a London pastor was convicted for selling fake COVID cures to his congregation. £91 for a bottle of oil and red string. Yes, you heard right. Oil and red string. He told them that they could die of COVID if they didn't buy it. If they preach being a good Christian but don't practice it, does that make them hypocrites? And which Christians are we talking about here? There's over 30,000 different denominations of Christianity. They all disagree with each other and often fight over who is right. In the meantime, what is not goodness? It's not childhood cancer, of course. That's Satan's work. This prompts the question, can we be bad without Satan? Maybe we should stop believing in the devil.